Hello, hello, hello. Welcome to another episode of Sincerely Agile with Mary. This is a platform where we promote the lean agile mindset, make change agents of ourselves, learn, unlearn, and relearn. And also, it's a platform where we are awesome and wholesome together. My name is Mary Lanignon, and as always, I'm your host for this show, Sincerely Agile with Mary. Now, today we have an interesting topic for you: preserving generational wealth. I'm sure you will agree with me that this is so important because having spent so much time, so much investment on our businesses, it only makes sense that we're able to pass it down, our generations. So, as you know, on this platform, we talk about the lean agile mindset. So, how can we apply these principles to ensure that we preserve our wealth? And that could be our business going down from one generation to the other, or it could be our investments being passed down to our children. So, I've just lost my guest. I've just lost Nikki, but I'm sure she'll come back in. Okay, there she is. She's back now. Okay, so Nikki, I was just about to bring you to the screen and you just disappeared, but luckily you're back now. So I'm just going to bring her to the screen. Now, here is Nikki Anani. Nikki, it's so nice to have you here on the show. I hope
Thank
you
you
can
so
hear
much
me.
for having me. I can hear you. Sorry about the tech issues.
I mean, that's bound to happen every now and again.
Yeah.
Nikki is an entrepreneur and a family business consultant, and she's here to help us do justice to that topic. Now, Nikki, how are you doing today?
I'm good. I'm well. I'm good, thank you. And
And
you?
how have you been coping with the COVID situation? What's it like in Nigeria these days?
It's been a bit of a mess. I mean, the second wave that hit Lagos, particularly after the Christmas break, was quite brutal. It got very close to home. So COVID moved away from being a public health crisis to being a business and economic crisis to being personal tragedies for me, my family, and a few friends. So it's been difficult trying to you know, shelter in place, keep loved ones safe, whilst obviously life has to carry on. Kids have to go to school, get an education, businesses have to be run, trying to
Mhm.
balance it all and at each moment prioritize what's the most important thing at each moment
Yeah,
has been tough because it seems like everything keeps changing.
yeah.
Um, but altogether, I mean, I'm blessed. I have more things to thank God for than I have to complain about. So,
And,
yeah,
and that's the right attitude to have. There's always something to be grateful for, isn't it? Always. I mean,
indeed.
we've all been hit by this, but we take every day one at a time. Right, let me introduce Nike Anani to you properly. Nike Anani is an entrepreneur and a consultant. She was rated as a top 100 family business consultant globally. She helps her clients bridge the gap between the senior and younger generations. As a result, they communicate, collaborate, and collectively gain clarity to increase profit and productivity in their family business. With over a decade of family business expertise in Nigeria, Nika helps owners around the world lead their family organizations to long-term impact and legacy. Her inside experience as a second generation family business owner birthed a passion to help other families in building legacy enterprises that would outlive them. Nika is an accountant, well, an ex Deloitte accountant in the UK, and a top rated family business expert, like I said before, with a family business and a wealth advisor qualification from Family Firm Institute. She is the co founder of African Family Firms, a Pan African association of family businesses, and the host of The Connected Generation. That is also a podcast. So she actually runs a podcast that talks about, wealth generation and wealth preservation. Nika's clients choose to engage her not only because of her extensive professional training, but also because of her practical experience as both a business founder and a next gen. This allows her to uniquely empathize with both generations and act as a connector. Nika is a champion for diversity and celebrates. Oh, I can't see that now. My screen is my screen has gone. Oh, I can't see the rest of my text. She celebrates diversity. Nike,
Yeah.
it's a pleasure to have you on the show today.
Thank you so much. It's an honor to be here.
Thank you. Now, you started off as a consultant with, Deloitte UK. One would say that is already a fantastic track record in terms of, a professional track record. But today you are a top-rated family business expert. Tell me, what's the compelling story behind that?
Okay. So at age 9, my family relocated to the UK. So I was out in Milton Keynes for many years. I went to uni in London, and then after uni, I studied economics. After uni, I decided to work at Deloitte, and that wasn't my first choice. My first choice, actually, my passion was always economic development of Africa. So I wanted to work in IMF, World Bank, DFID, any kind of multilateral organization, DFIs, and what have you. And I applied to all these organizations, and not one by mistake gave me an offer.
By mistake.
And not by mistake, no one even said, oh, for a 2-week internship. And so I was like, okay, God, I get it. This isn't for me right now. What else can I do? And at my university, for those of us that studied economics, we fell into 3 main buckets after uni. We either became investment bankers, management consultants, or we worked in the big 4 accountancy firms. And through a process of elimination, I decided I wasn't going to work in investment banking. I liked my work-life balance too much. And consulting sounded really fun and interesting, but I also liked stability too much in my personal life. So by process of elimination, I decided to work in Deloitte. And as God would have it, I actually absolutely loved the organization, the culture, the people, the learning environment, but the work itself. I was in corporate tax international. It just wasn't my passion. I'm sure it's somebody else's, just it wasn't mine. And I remember my dad and I would have conversations from time to time. He would update me with, excuse me, what's going on in the family business and what he's been doing in Nigeria. And he would often ask me, like, what do I want to do in the next 5 years? And I was like, honestly, Dad, I really don't know. I just know that it's not here. This doesn't light me up. And so we had a conversation, and he said, you know what, why don't you come to Nigeria for just a few months and shadow me? I'll introduce you to a few friends, and you can get more exposure to different industries at a more helicopter level rather than being on the operational side. Maybe that would spark an interest in you for what industry you like. And I had already started putting in an application for an MBA. So the plan was, okay, I'll come to Nigeria for three months. I'll go traveling for a few months and then go to business school. Hopefully, Nika will discover herself and, move on to whichever industry in the UK. But I got to Nigeria and I saw Nigeria through a completely different lens. I said I left Nigeria at 9. So I left before the days of social media, and we left very abruptly. So I left my friends, a lot of my close family behind. And I didn't really have much of a base in Nigeria. We would visit my dad, but it was always like me and my brothers would be like, count down to when we're back home. And when I came back this time around, I saw it through a different lens. I saw the entrepreneurial side of Nigeria, and it was just electric. And it lit me up in a way that the city of London never did. And I loved working alongside my father. I just felt like I got to know him in a different way as well. It was just so informal, but yet so meaningful, knowing that all the work that I was doing was working towards, firstly, putting food on the table for so many families, and also building wealth for my family. So the connection that wasn't there in Deloitte in the office was really there. The motivation, that spark came alive when I came back. And then I met my husband. So this was 10 years ago. And so in the process, I was integrated into the family business, which is a construction company. I became a director there, working in admin, HR, finance, and things like that. And then I just became so passionate about family business, right? I observed that businesses were key in the Nigerian economy. Private sector was what was the engine, but everyone was obsessed with oil and gas sector and multinationals, IOCs, but everyone was completely neglecting the true drivers of the economy, and those were indigenous businesses. Oftentimes, these businesses might be small sized, but
Yeah.
they were the economy. And I also observed that, whilst integrating into my business and wanting to see that, okay, how can I learn to navigate myself better so we can build a legacy business? I couldn't find many domestic indigenous examples, success stories of, say, third generation, fourth generation family business. And I started digging around and researching and discovered that only 2% of family businesses would survive beyond the founder in Nigeria, compared
That
to,
is true.
yeah, very low compared to 33 globally. And so, to cut a long story short, a couple years later, a friend of mine then lost her dad, and I saw that 2% come to life. And it's different when you read a statistic, but when that statistic becomes a story, it touches you and moves you in a way that nothing can ever do. And so I was like, okay, right, what's my part to play in reversing this 2%? What can I do? And so I trained up with the Family Firm Institute to become a family business advisor, family wealth advisor. And then also realized that becoming an advisor wasn't sufficient. Families needed more than just a consultant. They actually needed each other. They needed community. And so I, with a friend of mine, co-founded an association, a non-profit association of family businesses, so that they could learn from one another, they could share with one another, support each other. Sometimes it leads to business with each other, actually, but really it's just having that shoulder to lean on, that, okay, you get it. You're also navigating this tricky confluence between family and business and wanting to move past this generation on the African soil with the many social, economic, political, challenges that come our way being in Africa. So yeah, that's how I got to where I am. Very much wasn't an opportunistic. It was very much, like I said in my bio, birthed, the passion was birthed from my insider experience and inside, on the ground, inside experience, living it, breathing it. So I have deep empathy for my market. I'm one of you. I'm a family business owner myself on the continent. So yes, I know how hard it is to run a business in Africa.
And of course, your friend lost her dad, and you experienced firsthand, you said, how this 2% came about. And you then set out to reverse that. That's an amazing perspective. Now, is there a particular value system that facilitates the preservation of generational wealth? And I ask this because we see some particular group of people doing this better than others. Okay. So, what is it in our culture or in our value system that really facilitates this?
That's a really complicated question, but I'll sum it up in an answer. You honed in on a value system. That is one, and it's one of seeking to be stewards of wealth, or even better, in my view, is to be multipliers of wealth. So, at the bottom of the level, the least helpful mindset towards money is, let us blow this thing. Like, as we're earning it, we're throwing it away on assets that are non or depreciating assets or expenses that tomorrow nobody can make anything out of them. So the next level is, let us just show all that we have, which is similar, right? It's just a bit better than blow. So you might have something to show for it. You might have an asset, you might have property or what have you. The next level is, let's just keep what we have. Let's just maintain what we have. Or there's even better, let's steward what we have, not just for our generation, but for future generations to come. And then on top of that is, let's multiply it. So I think quite oftentimes we come at wealth with a very passive mindset. We don't explicitly in our households define what do we want for our wealth, right? Or we may say it, but we don't put in the work. so that we actually get to true multi-generational wealth. So in a nutshell, it's really about ensuring that not only you as a business founder, but also you're carrying along your family members in buying into this mindset, this value that this wealth, it's important now. And again, this is very individual. We all have different value systems. But I think
Mm-hmm.
it's very important for us as families to explicitly define what our value systems are. The worst that can happen is to not even know. For you as a founder not to have had an explicit conversation with your family, you may be thinking, let's multiply this wealth. Your children may be thinking, let's blow it. The second I get a hold of it, it's all
That's
gone.
brilliant.
It's all so it's important to have clear conversations. What do we want? What do we
Mm.
want? I think the hardest part is those conversations. When we know what we want, we can then come up with a plan to get to what to get to where we want to go to. But the worst is you're getting in a car and you don't even know where you're driving towards. You don't know which
Wow.
destination you're driving towards. That's a lot of what um, business owners tend to do, is not have
In which
explicit.
case, any road we take you. If you're not sure where you're going, any road we take you, you know? So when you
Exactly.
say they don't know, or sometimes they know, but they are not intentional about the
Mhm,
concrete steps to take. Okay, this is what we want for our wealth. These are the actions we want to take. How do we want to preserve our wealth? Do we want to go
mhm,
into stocks? Do we want to go into real estate? There, that conversation is not had. Is that what you're saying?
mhm.
They don't have
Yes.
that conversation.
Yeah. There's money is taboo in a lot
Mm,
of cultures. Death is taboo in our culture. So for us as a family to even be talking about, when mommy daddy transition, what do we want to see, is already a very uncomfortable, difficult conversation to be had. So we're talking about two taboo subjects, death and money. But the truth of the matter is that we must have these conversations, unless we will continue to see this repeated cycle, like we were talking about when I was backstage, of businesses building up great businesses in first generation, and then unfortunately the founder passes away, and then months later there's nothing to be found, and then the second generation have to pick up the pieces and start to they literally go from riches to poverty. Is that really what we want? So the alternative is for us to have these difficult conversations. But I think we have difficult conversations all the time in life, right?
yeah.
We have difficult conversations at work. We have difficult conversations in friendships. Why can't we have difficult conversations about business and wealth when they have huge consequences? Not just for me as a first or second generation wealth owner, poor me, all my father's wealth is gone. But because it's really not about me, it's about the business is supporting all the employees and their families against a context of absolute poverty. There's no welfare system out here, right? We're
No,
not in the UK or the US,
no.
right? These people lose their jobs. I know PhD holders that haven't had jobs for 5 years. That's the reality of the tough economy we face. And then communities depend on business owners. When business founders, get to a certain level of affluence, they always go back to where they came from. Always. Whether it's they support a school, they build a road, they do something. And in Africa, to propel economic development, it's at that community level. So it's really critical that we think outside of ourselves, that this is not really about, oh, I don't really want to talk about the death. No, it's not about you and your family. It's really about, there's a whole ecosystem that's dependent on you. You may not
Absolutely.
see it, but they are. Mm.
Yeah. I mean, imagine an organization like Dangote going down today. Just imagine that on that scale in terms of the families that will be affected. I'm just trying to buttress your point. So even if you're a local business where you have, say, 10 employees, if that business goes down, that's 10 people out of a job. And like you just said, there's no welfare system in Nigeria. No welfare system at all. So with this value system, we might probably have families where they have the courage, should we say, to have those difficult conversations. Now,
Mhm.
how do we encourage those difficult conversations where it seems to be lacking?
Mm. Um, so difficult conversations really about enabling everyone to have a voice, right? Um, so a difficult conversation, the reason why we think a conversation is difficult is because we're anticipating either shame, disappointment, rejection, and what have you. And we don't want to place ourselves in a place of vulnerability.
Yeah.
But I think the perspective, like I said, is by deferring that difficult conversation, you're placing yourself in a place of danger, not vulnerability in the
Mm-hmm.
future. You're just deferring that uncomfortable day in the future. So that's one. So remembering that this is for the good of all of us, not,
Yeah.
and we have to get uncomfortable to have them. Secondly, is there's a lot of the time in society we've placed labels on each other. You are privileged because you're older, or you are privileged because you're younger, or you're richer, or you're a female, or you're what have you. And quite a lot of the time in the family setting, we have we have labels that we've placed each other. We've named each other. This one is the favorite child, or this one is daddy's girl, this one is mommy's boy, or I hate you because 20 years ago this happened, and what have you. Um, the truth of the matter is that all of us in the family, we are all we're not privileged. There's nobody that is privileged, so to speak. We all have our weaknesses, we all have our challenges, we all have we're all lonely.
Hmm.
For founders are extremely lonely. They have a lot of fear. There's a lot of responsibility on their shoulders that they're carrying. So if we come at a place of empathy in
Hmm.
conversation with each other, remembering that and are not holding any presuppositions or judgments towards each other, remembering that all of us we all have our crosses that we're bearing. And it's
Absolutely.
important that we all listen to each other
Mm-hmm.
because we're a family after all. Brene Brown is I just absolutely love her and a lot of her
Yeah.
work. And she has a lot of work on how we should need to include outliers.
Hmm.
We need to consider outliers. We need to integrate outliers. We won't be able to move forward until all voices are heard, all voices are acknowledged, and all voices are made to belong. So it's it's this is the soft stuff, right? The title of this is preserving generational wealth, and here we are talking about empathy, vulnerability, and what have you. And people are always shocked when I throw this at them. And the truth of the matter is, soft stuff has been placed on a hierarchy of the bottom of the chain, whilst the technical stuff is what we need to all pay attention to, and that's
Yeah.
a load of
Yeah.
nonsense, in my opinion.
Absolutely.
Soft stuff is leadership skills.
It
Leadership
is.
skills is empathy, resilience, vulnerability, and
Mm-hmm.
what have you. And a lot of the time, we may need a third party to come in and kind of facilitate these awkward conversations to ensure that there's not one voice that's dominating, to ensure that we're including everybody, to ensure that we're even thinking strategically, big picture. Are we sweating the important stuff? Are we fighting over the menial stuff, right? Um, are we really thinking more long term? So yeah.
Very, very important thing you said there about vulnerability and talking about bringing a third party in. I mean, I work as an agile coach within organizations, just like you mentioned. It's very difficult to have those difficult conversations. And sometimes we'll feel being vulnerable means we're weak. And that is not the case
Mm-hmm.
at all. These are real, leadership skills. Now, we have a comment here from Runke. The generation before those born in the 60s see it as a taboo or wishing them dead if you bring up post-transition plans. And that's exactly what you said. It's a taboo. We don't want to talk about money. We don't want to talk about daddy or mommy transitioning. What do you mean? You want me to die before my time? All sorts will come up. But we need to start having these difficult conversations. And in a way, you seem to have answered, as part of the first question you answered, you seem to have answered this one where I'm asking, why do we often see family wealth being eroded as opposed to being
Mm-hmm.
passed down to the next generation?
Mm.
And I think you have sort of alluded to that in your first.
I'll add just a few more points on that because it's
Yeah.
a bit nuanced. Yeah, it falls into three categories:
Okay.
mindset, strategy, and execution. And the first was, the first answer we were talking about the value system, moving from also a lot of us in Africa were conditioned to be hustlers. We're just thinking
Mm,
about profits tomorrow,
mm,
because it's a very difficult environment, right? I
it
appreciate
is.
that. But we need to think generationally. We need to
Mm,
plan 100 years in advance. To plan to fail to plan is to plan to fail.
to fail.
And you can't just take each day as it comes when we're talking about generational.
Mm,
A generation is 30 years. In 30 years, there's a lot that happens. People have children, they get married, there are
yeah.
divorces, there are deaths. The family becomes more complex. So we need to plan. So, and we also need to move away from being me focused to collective, so collaboration. Our families can be quite complex here. We have larger nuclear families, more enmeshed extended families. We have polygamy.
Mm,
We have all sorts of interesting things that add to the mix. So we need to really, like I was alluding to in the last answer, create a system where there's safety for people to speak, and a process through which we can collectively brainstorm and paint this picture of what do we want and then how are we going to get there. The second category is strategy, and a lot of us, there's a lack of strategy, whether it's in the business or in the family. And this has disastrous consequences because as we're moving from generation to generation, the
mhm.
dynamics are changing.
Yeah.
So in the first gen, it's probably a fast growing industry because it's a relatively new business. And the family is still quite small. The founder can make very old decisions and it's so central to the family, the business, everything, right? But by the time you move to second gen, the business is 30 years old, might be in a maturing industry. The family has grown times heaven knows. And then add on top 21st century disruption, kind of disruptive environment. So it makes it even more important that we think very strategically. And as all these many dynamics are going on, we need to create what is the compelling case for us as a family to stay in business together.
Mm,
Because it's very easy for Nika to go in one direction, Jane to go off in the
yeah.
other. And by that, I don't necessarily mean that Nika needs to work in the business as a CEO, but to put, add her piece to the business, whether it's from the sidelines as maybe a board member or an
Mhm.
advisor or what have you. But what is that compelling case for us to stay in business together or to invest together? We need to really articulate what's our shared purpose, what's our
Mm,
shared vision, our shared values, because that clarity, it acts like a glue for us as a family.
yeah.
And then the third bucket is execution. So because of all these many complexities, we need to ensure that there's a governance system, a effective governance system, both within the family and in the business. In the business world, we call it corporate governance and what have
Mhm.
you. But in a family business context, where we need to be focusing on issues, family, because a lot of family issues can spill out into the business, or a lot
Exactly.
of business issues can spill out into the family. So, how are we going to make decisions so that we're minimizing conflict? How are we going to ensure that we have clarity, order, and sanity? And what's the process by which we come together and
Mhm.
collaborate? What does that look like? And it's not a one size fits all. Every family business is unique. We have a saying in the industry: if you've seen one family business, you've seen one family business.
That's it.
So we need to actually customize a governance system that's reflective of the soul and the essence of the family at that point in time. Because in a generation from now, there are going to be more people, more family members, and their values may change. Their values may not, but who knows? But it's important that, the purpose, the value, the vision is reflective of that
Mm.
family at that point in time. So, yeah.
And that is why you need to formalize things, so to speak, right?
Mhm.
Good.
Yes.
Thank you for that. So it says here, um, what should we start doing differently to involve the next generation in the affairs of our wealth? And this could be our business or it could be investment. What is that one or two things that we should definitely do differently?
Have conversations. Number one, it's important that your children know this
Mhm,
business and are
mhm.
exposed to it, and even more so know the investments that the family has and are exposed to that. They cannot love what they don't know. So don't be
Mm.
surprised if after a generation they're off in Canada and then you want to retire and you're like, these children, they don't want to come. They're not interested in the business, even from Canada. They don't take an interest. They didn't know it. You never exposed it to them. Nobody falls in love with what they don't know.
Wow.
That's one. Um, and then another thing is understanding that there's no one size fits all as to how the younger generation can contribute to the family enterprise. So some may be very entrepreneurial, and that's great.
Mhm.
So they can come alongside you as a founder and understudy you. They may become the next CEO, but some might not. But and even when they're not entrepreneurial, they need to understand what it is to be responsible owners, because assuming this business will move successfully into the next generation, they will be the future owners of the business. And
Yeah.
being an owner of a business is not being, it comes with responsibility. There's a minimum level of education, whether it's understanding like corporate like governance, understanding how to read financial statements, understanding business strategy, understanding the industry of the business and what have you. And then equally on the wealth side, understanding what do we even own, all these, which landed property do we own, where is it, being responsible, how is this held? Is this as in a trust? Is this the foundation? Is this who's holding company? Being on top of all these things takes a lot of diligence.
Wow.
For those kids that are not necessarily entrepreneurially inclined,
Mm.
for those that are, sorry, giving them room to practice their leadership is key, because quite often what we see is the founder, this is his or her baby that they've nurtured, and they find it very, very difficult to let go. And so it
Mhm.
can be quite difficult for the next generation to actually practice their leadership. And that can make them very hesitant about their essentially lack confidence.
Mm.
And make them even then pull out more from the business. So say for instance, the family business is a manufacturing plant in Otta or whatever, and the rising generation, the next generation, they have entrepreneurial leanings, but they're not necessarily interested in going to Otta to become the plant manager. But they want to set up their own tech startup. Support them. We can
Mm.
provide financing. They can leverage off the family's assets, the know-how, the existing staff, in building this new venture. And then what's happening is the family's wealth is diversifying, which is critical
That's it.
in our context. So we call in the family business what we call these intrapreneurship, where within the family, people are going out to build out new ventures. And it's so key to kind of breathe life into the business and the enterprise, because, like I said, the family is becoming more and more complex, it's becoming bigger, more mouths to feed from this family business that might be becoming more like maturing and what have you. So it's important to do so. And then for those that are not entrepreneurially inclined, there's so much opportunity to make their stamp, whether it's in on the wealth side.
Mhm.
Somebody has to be on top of the estate planning, the succession planning. What do we own? Keeping records, being in touch with lawyers, estate planners, and what have you. Or quite what we're seeing a lot of these days is families setting up philanthropic units, foundations. And actually, this foundation space is probably the most popular amongst next gens. That is what is drawing them in working in the
Mm.
foundation. So I think the
Interesting.
options for the next generation are countless, and
Yes, it
we
is.
shouldn't make yeah, we shouldn't make it in such a way that the family business becomes a burden on the next generation. It comes with responsibility, that's for sure. But it shouldn't be a burden. It should be something they love, that they appreciate, and they treasure. So what is key is really just exposing them to the totality of the family enterprise and inviting them to bring in their new perspectives. Because for us to be successful, we have to be so future focused in this choppy
Mhm.
21st century disruptive business world we find ourselves in. And the rising generation are digitally native, they're technologically fluent, they have a different perspective. and they have a lot of value to add, even if they're not necessarily in the managing director seats. Mm.
I like the way you've answered that. And I also like the comment Ronke has here. Also being intentional about getting children educated abroad to come home yearly to work in the family business during the holidays. Because what you said, Nick, is that how do you fall in love with what you don't know? I mean, you go, like I said, there are some, group of people where from when their children are very, very young, they teach them the value of a dollar. It is just the way they are in terms of their culture. It doesn't matter how rich they are, they teach their children the value of a dollar. Now, we also see some families, some group of people who believe, I suffered when I was young. I cannot let my children suffer. So, what that means to them is their children shouldn't work. Their children should be driven to school by limousine. Their children everything should be done for their children. They have no clue how this money comes in. All they know how to do is, like you said, blow, spend, spend, spend. And something happens, and these children don't even know they are left from their right. They don't know they are left from their right. Now, with the new millennials, like you said, probably they are not interested in going to that factory in Abeokuta or in Ibadan. But we can now start diversifying, like you said. So the parents, if you like, need to now be more open to diversification.
Yes.
They need to be open to the fact that, you know what, continuity doesn't necessarily mean it has to be the farm in Ota or the farm in Ibadan. Continuity can also mean, you know what, I'm investing in my son's digital product or in his nightclub in Lagos or wherever. So that mindset needs to change. It doesn't have to be the same business from generation to generation. So in terms of, the clients you see from time to time, how have you been able to convince some of your clients to say, you know what, we know you want to keep this, business in the family, but does it really have to be this business? How about you actually listen to your, your children, the millennials in your family? How have you been successful to, help people shift that thinking?
No, it's absolutely critical. My role is a guide and not a hero. I am a guide, so I'm signpost to these are your options, and this is how you can do things. And my role also is to inspire, not to impose. So I really believe that business founders they're very what's the word I'm looking for? They know what they want from life. These folks they've had their teeth knocked in. They've built up significant businesses against very difficult terrain. They know their stuff. They're very difficult people to convince. So it's a very much a long-term engagement in inspiring them to see why this is needed, right? A lot of business founders will say, why should I have to diversify? I've kept my money in cash. I've bought property in the past and it's done me well. But the truth of the matter is the assets of the past and the assets of the future are not necessarily the same. Our currency is losing, unfortunately. I hate to say it, we all know it loses value every time we sneeze. And so we have to do things in a different way to be able to future-proof the family enterprise. So yeah, a lot of my role is is building bridges across generations, trying to get the older gen to understand that it's important to invite and allow the new perspectives of the younger gen, and equally getting the younger gen to understand that it's important to honor and appreciate all that the older gen have brought to the table. Because as a young gen, I know myself, it's very easy to be in a position of the critic, the one that is marking and telling you all the things you didn't do right and what we can do, better, because I've come from England and I worked in Deloitte and this is not how Deloitte was. So you're failing on this. We need to change that. We need to change. I can tell you this, folks, that's not the way to get the older gen on board. We need to actually reflect, honor, appreciate all they brought to the table. They're a resilient group. They are a very entrepreneurial group. They're a very innovative group. Do they have things to learn from us as younger gen? Of course they do. But that's not to discount what they bring to the table. So it's really getting each generation to lean in, be open-minded to
Mm,
listen, concede in some areas through collaboration,
mm.
right? So that we can co-build a lasting enterprise. And again, a lot of my work is long-term. My work is not transactional. It's not do this in 90 days and this guarantees you. Building a family business is long-term. We're thinking about 100-year company plus in some
Yeah,
instances. There are some families that have given me the mandate is I want this to be 200 years plus. Can you do this? Yes, I can, as long as you're prepared to put in the work. I'm, like I said,
exactly.
I'm just a guide. You are the hero. I'm a
Absolutely.
guide. You are the
Absolutely.
hero. So yeah, absolutely. If that's what you want, the hardest part is what I term as the three C's: communicating as a family, gaining clarity. Clarity is a friend of mine says whenever you wake up is your morning. Some of us,
Mhm.
it's been night time up until we're 79, but when you wake up and you're like, this is exactly what I want to do. That is, especially when you come together as a family and you have that clarity, that collective
Mm.
clarity of purpose, of values, of vision, of mission. It's really, really important. And then lastly, collaboration. Once we have that foundation, we can build anything we want to build. So long as we really understand that we won't always get our way. It's
Mhm.
not about us. It's oftentimes you stomach some things because you're thinking of generations that you never even met. It will be in
Absolutely.
the interest of the next generation that we make this decision, right? So really thinking more long term and
Yeah.
thinking about legacy, thinking about when you're making decisions. I'm planting a seed today and it will grow into a tree. I might not be here to see the tree, but I know that
Absolutely.
these seeds I'm planting are for someone's benefit. I think even the discourse in the way we govern our nations, the way we run our societies, if we can all
Mhm.
start to embrace that kind of thinking, we would see transformation across the continent.
Fantastic. And I like the three C's: collaboration, clarity, and communication. They're just so key. I mean, how do we even move an inch if we don't do all three? We need to know where exactly we're headed. We need to be intentional about it. We need to have the courage to have the right conversations. And I really hope we will move past this taboo of money and debt. I mean, there's one thing I say: as long as you have a DOB, you have a DOD. It's that simple.
Indeed. Indeed.
It is that simple. I don't know why it's such a taboo. I really hope we can get past it. Yeah.
But sorry, but, I challenge us. It's really not that much of a taboo. Once the loved one dies, then we start picking ashwabi, picking rice, picking color, spending million that we don't have to put them 6 foot under. So, so we know how to have conversations on death. We've just normalized what types of conversations we can have
We
about
want
death.
to
So
have. Exactly.
yeah,
We
we've chosen what we
normalize the
want to have.
conversations we want to have.
Yeah.
I absolutely like that. And I like the fact that you brought up this Ashwebi culture. I don't know, it's a billion-dollar business, by the way. It's a billion-dollar
Wow.
business. It's something that has become our way of life, quite expensive. And I can tell you, if you look at some people's wardrobe, the ashwabis in that wardrobe could well be two duplexes. Could well be two duplexes. But hey, it's a culture that we have come to embrace. I've seen people take ashwabi for £500 here in England. I've seen people take ashwabi for £1,000. It's a very funny culture. Let me put it that way. I mean, if I should, it's not as if I don't do ashwabi, but I wouldn't do ashwabi for £500. I'm sorry. So anyway, we don't want to talk about debt, but we talk about it when it's time to put them 6 feet under and do all the party and all of that. However, let us move on with the next question. And the next question is: family businesses tend to be plagued by informalities. As a family
Mhm.
business expert, how should we be setting up our family businesses to ensure sustainability, growth, and preservation for next gen? And I ask this question because in a family business, how do we talk about salary?
Mhm.
How do we talk about who takes which position? We just start the business, you're doing this, I'm doing that. Everything is so informal. And it seems
Mhm.
this is quite common amongst Africans, if I can put it that way, because we're talking about this because we want to create awareness and we want people to correct it. How do you approach this with your clients?
No, you're absolutely right. And honestly, it's actually not just an African issue. It's a global issue, the informality in family businesses. And we're back to that lovely word governance. We have to come up with policies. Otherwise, the informality will implode the family business around stress points, which is usually death or incapacitation of the founder. And it will no longer be able to go forward. So things like salaries, it's important that family business employees are remunerated on very explicit basis. Is this money that's going to this family member, or what basis, what is it for? Is it for their working in the business, for their owning a share of the business? What is it for? Is it a dividend? We need to firstly streamline each cash flow stream that goes to each family member. For the sustainability and longevity of the business, the family business cannot be treated like a piggy bank, a pot for every family member, that when I'm low on cash, I'll just debit, whatever I need from the family business. There has to be some structure and order, delineation of personal accounts from business accounts and what have you. And again, you were alluding to, can anyone work in this business? Some families, they decide that one of the strong purposes of the business is to create employment for the family members. That's absolutely fine. But what are the standards for that? Does that mean that even those that have poor ethics, poor discipline, won't turn up to work, have a guaranteed job? Is that what we want? Are those the values we want to pass on to the next generation, and also to pass on to non-family staff? Because they're always like a fly on the wall watching this crazy stuff happen. Like, what is this? Funke, we saw Funke when she was a baby. We were the ones that were working and transferring money to Madame to pay for her school fees. She's come back from London. She doesn't come work at all, and she's getting millions and millions of naira to do nonsense. It really reduces the morale of the employees. So it's important that we're building organizations that can stand the test of time and are built on strong foundations. When we're thinking generationally, I often say to clients that you have three options as a business founder. You can either pass the management of this business to your child, one of your children. You can either pass the management of this business to a non-family staff, or you can sell this business. But all three options, they require the same thing. They require corporate governance, they require family governance, they require succession planning. And and a lot of people seem to think that selling the business is an easy way out. It's actually not. So you're creating a liquidity event for all the family members. What is the plan for that money that's going to come in? It may create tax issues. It may, what are you investing in? You may just be creating another opportunity outside of clarity, outside of a well-defined strategic investment plan that's tailored for the family's needs long term. You may just be creating another bloat that in 5 years, nobody has anything to show for all those many years. So there's nothing that we do in family business that does not require tilling the soil, putting the seeds in. Is hard work. You have to think long term and build your business on a strong foundation. Think very much about HR is critical. So everybody in your organization should at least have a job description, should have an employment letter, should have annual appraisals, even those that are family members. And they should have defined roles. What from care that's coming? What is she? Has she come in as? Is she a finance manager? Is she an admin manager? Is she director of what? What are her parameters? So we don't create conflicts. Because quite often the entrance of next gens they step on toes of the non-family staff, and it creates all sorts of conflicts. So we want to think about HR. We want to think about finance. Having well-run bank accounts, just a basic accountant. We want to think about corporate governance, like I was alluding to, and succession planning.
Fantastic. And as you were just talking about HR, finance, job description, what came to my mind was, the ability to outsource some of those activities. So sometimes some people may be thinking, I don't need an HR manager, that's expensive for me. I don't need a finance manager, that's expensive. But today, with technology, with digitization and all of that, I believe we have third-party businesses out there that you can outsource this to, and makes it cheaper. You save on those kind of services. So if you're a business owner, you're out here as one of our audience, or you're watching this at any point in time, you really want to take what Nika is saying into account here, because we tend to start businesses and we think we can just have an open check. Oh, I need 20,000. I dip my hand in the potty. I need 50,000. I dip my hand in the potty, because everything is just done informally. And that is what puts us in trouble. And if I go back to how we started, you get to a point where your business is not just about you anymore. It's
Yeah.
not just about you and your family. You have, a community probably depending on that business. So we really need to have that systems thinking approach to what we do, and think more long term. And, like you said, communication, clarity, and what was the third one?
Collaboration.
Collaboration. That is so important within the family business, so that they can be very, very intentional about it. I think this is where we're going to stop, but I'm just going to look in terms of our questions, but I'm just going to look at what we have in the chat. Um, okay, just finance, human resources, and other key business structures must be put in place. Absolutely. And then Ronke is saying something here. Ronke said COVID-19 may have given us a reorientation on what we place value on, such as large weddings, burials, with expensive Ashwebi uniform wear. What do you think about this? I think she's right. I totally agree with
To
what
an
you.
extent, but some people are still not learning the lesson. But to an extent, I do worry a little bit about our value system. And there has been a deviation from our original value system as a people, in our various locale, wherever we're from. And a lot of it has to do with colonization. That's a whole different conversation. Who we were prior to our various colonizers, we were
Mm,
then told who to become, and we forgot who we were. And it's almost like we're mimicking. I'm not really sure who we're mimicking, but we have great virtue systems that we've deviated from in Yoruba land, like Omolabi, what have you, system promoting honesty, integrity,
mm,
the virtue of speaking well, of being diligent, of
yeah.
there's a lot of deviation from who we are as a people. And a lot of us will need to become what I term as cultural pioneers,
Mm,
and leave behind what today people are saying is our culture, and start to redefine the culture that will serve us as a
mm.
community, as a nation,
Absolutely.
and as a continent.
As the people, absolutely. Because this Ashwebi thing, it's a huge problem. It is a huge problem. Some people even go as far as going to loan money to throw these huge parties. And it's an interesting culture, but like you also said about our value system, I mean, I work as an agilist, and I often say when we talk about agility, we need to go back to our roots in Africa. Africa was quite community driven. Nigeria was community driven. Okay.
Mhm.
And we have so many proverbs that can really attest to the fact that, you know what, agility has long been a thing for us in Africa. Very, very, a long time ago. But like you said, we have deviated from
Mhm.
our value system. We actually I don't even know what culture we have now. It's just a mesh of all, put together. And then we are in this digital age also, which also then projects everything from everywhere onto our
Yes.
millennials as well. That is another whole conversation. You see,
Mhm.
that is a whole new conversation on its own. Let's see what else we have here. We have Yemi Dubote. Thank you for explaining the three C's. I love it. What connects collaboration? What connects collaboration, clarity, and communication? We still have 5 minutes.
Those three C's are just what I term as the critical success family, critical success factors of business families. So we want to communicate, have clarity and collaboration. And a lot of it was based on studies internationally on what makes family businesses thrive and what
Mm,
makes family businesses fail.
mm,
So there was a study done in the US looking at those families that failed to move from Gen 1 beyond. And 70% of the reason why they fail is due to either lack of communication or lack of effective communication. And then again, collaboration, really failing to include marginalized voices. The females are often behind the scenes all over the world. This is not an African problem. In my view, we're even doing better than our global counterparts in the gender department. And so we often see these generational gaps where
mhm,
everyone feels like their voices are not being heard, and what have you, and then not having clarity. No one really knows, why are we, like I said, what's the compelling case for us to be in business together as a family? Because we can all go our separate ways. We
mhm.
can all we can all go our separate ways, sell this business, collect our various shares, and go our separate ways. But really, why are we in business together? What are our shared values? What are our shared purpose? Our shared identity?
Mm,
It's critical for families to get clarity on those three things to be able to build
absolutely.
and forward forward. Mm.
Fantastic. And brilliant episode. Parents and children need to collaborate more financially. Absolutely. But sometimes within the same family, you might have some children who are just naturally, entrepreneurs, and you might have the ones who just want to take this money and blow it. But then again, I like what you said. We can't fall in love with what we don't know. And if
Mhm.
we catch them young, I think, if we catch them young, then I think it can really help. Even within the house, let them earn money within the house. They can earn. Okay, if you do
Yes.
this, you do that, I give you this. We can begin to teach them what that is. And I tell you a very quick story. My second daughter, she's that, she has that kind of mindset. When she was barely, this is Sherry now, when she was barely 3 years old, I took them to the park. It was when the scooters had just come out. And she had a scooter and she was playing with her scooter in the park. And a little girl came to her and said, "Can I go on your scooter?" And she goes, "Yeah, that's not a problem for £2." She said, "Yeah, that's not a problem for £2." And I was just in the corner looking at my daughter. I did not interfere. I didn't say, "Oh, let her have your scooter." No, that's not nice. I didn't say that. My daughter was negotiating £2 for her scooter. And she hasn't changed. She's still like that.
That's hilarious.
She's so business minded. And I knew she had seen the ice cream van, of course, around the corner. So there she was,
Mhm.
transacting. And I was like, wow, this girl is going to be a businesswoman. And right now she's thinking about 1,001 things. So sometimes it's just in us also.
Yes.
And I
Yeah.
guess if it's not in us, we probably shouldn't force it. And this is where the
Yeah.
conversation comes in to say, okay, let's have clarity about what we want to do with the family business so that, whether we want to diversify, whether you want to be a non-executive director or whatever the case may be. So I think, again, clarity, communication, and collaboration. Thank you so much, Nike, for having been here and, sharing your 3 C's with us. I hope our audience have really, really enjoyed this session. I have learned a lot from it. I'm an entrepreneur also, and I really want my businesses to transcend generations. So there's a lot I'm going to be taking on from here as we go. Any more questions? Let's see. Any more comments? Um, okay, yeah. Hello, mommy. Hello. Yeah. Nika is saying this is interesting. Fumi says very well said. Bless you. Thank you all so much. Thank you all so much. We have to go now. Nika, thank you for investing your
Thank
time with
you.
Sincerely Agile with Mary. I have learned a lot, and I'm sure our audience have also learned so much. We probably will have you again because there's just so much to talk about, isn't it? We were talking
Yeah.
about culture, and we're saying that's a whole different thing. So maybe you'll come back and talk to us about culture. Who knows?
Yeah.
Thank you so
Yeah.
much. Thank you to our audience. Thank
Thank
you for.
you.
Thank you so much. Bye bye.
Bye.